And we are live for another episode of the Black Stitch Hockey Cast. Very interesting day or series and sequence of days of hockey recently. Definitely had some interesting events occur. Gonna really look to the PWHL for their shenanigans afternoon with one of the, if not the most egregious missed offside calls that I have seen since the infamous Colorado Avalanche. Which, ironically, the PWHL was at the ball. But really just going to call out, and, the reason these names are out there, Jenny Cameron and Patrick Tapuzzo. How the fuck do you miss a player 3 strides offside in a 0-0 overtime game? How do you miss somebody being 8 feet offsides? In the era of fucking instant replay and digital review, how the fuck do you let that goal stand? How the fuck do you miss that? I'm sorry, the NHL's quality of play has gotten so much worse because of the infamous Colorado incident where a player was 3 strides offside on a game-winning goal. Then it has ruined the pace of play with reviews and challenges. And, we've talked about PWHL officiating for a year and a half now. And for fuck's sake, how? How do you miss something that easy? How there's gray areas. I understand it's not always easy to catch dirty hits, violent plays, the things within the margins. Missed calls are going to happen. You cannot miss a 3-stride offside play in overtime in a PWHL game. It's at any professional level where you have access to instant replay. Missing that is completely fucking inexcusable, and the fans, not just the teams, but the fans deserve an apology. You wonder why only 3,500 people showed up to the Prudential Center on a Sunday afternoon? Shit like that is why 3.5 thousand people show up to the Prudential Center on a Sunday afternoon. Get it right or you will lose your fan base in struggling markets like New York. It's not fucking hard to get it right. And you'll argue, oh yeah, New York benefited from this. Yeah, it doesn't make the league marketable. It doesn't make the league sellable when you fuck up on that level. And yes, we're opening with violence this week.
It's a righteous cause.
I think it's been it definitely has been a couple of days of hockey lately. Definitely a lot less positive narratives going on outside of the United States Capitol. With all the good that's going on for Washington, specifically with, Ovechkin and his pursuit, Ovechkin and his excellence. And also, you always love seeing a guy who's been playing in the A getting his first career goal.
I was hoping you'd have a shout-out from my boy Ethan Frank. You know how stoked I am about the early impressions he's made.
Oh, yeah, Ethan Frank, speedster, skillful as all hell.
Fast as fuck. Makes Connor McDavid look like Tyson Forster, as I articulated it in our group chat.
I love to see it. Speaking of guys from Colorado and things that have originated in the state of Colorado. Yeah, really glad to see that from Ethan Frank last night. Really great to see Ovechkin. Really great to see Pierre-Luc Dubois being the best version of himself without the pressure of playing in, as Jonathan Bernier once said, small hockey market Los Angeles. Liam, it's going to be one of those nights as right as we go on live, Cutter Gauthier scores a goal.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
I turned and saw it and was like, I can't believe we got a goal tonight. And then I saw the number, I'm like, doubly surprising. Him and Brett Leeson have been a bizarre little dim little bright spot in our bottom 4 this year. Speaking of Washington draft picks, Brett Leeson, one of the small bright spots has been those guys on the ice together. Even though Leeson didn't get an assist on that, he was on camera when that puck crossed the line. This is looking like a solid PDO bender for Carolina, which for some reason happens to them almost every time they play us. We'll call that the curse of Frederick Anderson.
It's like they although that was like that was like kind of like Coach Hedkov, it was a pretty good release, but I also like it was one of those reminders at those occasional times where he would just he doesn't make the save that he needs to. It's like I look at this game at large, and I feel like it almost seems like they fast forwarded to the time of the year, which typically happens in the late stages, especially of their postseason runs that always flame out, where they're still their possession dominant self, but the volume shots are not getting it done. Like this is like a playoff game against a Western Conference opponent played in January for them right now.
You know, the thing of the curse of Frederick Anderson, he has to be the only player in NHL history, and hopefully AI can help me verify this. He's going to be the only player, he's the only player I'm aware of, but he's going to be the only player in NHL history to be drafted by two different teams and have actually played for both of them. Like it's such an odd thing that like Carolina drafted him, didn't tender him, he re-entered the draft, got selected by Anaheim, and then still ended up in Carolina years later. Like the number of guys who were drafted multiple times alone has to be incredibly small. So the amount of guys to actually like not get tendered by the team that drafted them and still end up playing for them at a later point in time, while also not being a college free agent, is absolutely like dumb.
Yeah, that's an interesting search. Also, when you said bottom four, was that just like a slip, or is that kind of like the situation that you guys have at the end of your forward depth where you don't even have a full-on bottom six?
Yeah, you know, it's a little bit of both because, you know, I could correct myself on that, and then I remember Ross Johnston plays minutes with them, and Ross Johnston, he has more points than I would expect, and he's made a couple more high IQ plays than I'd expect out of him. But you know, every shift that Drew Hellison plays while Mintyukov is in the box is an act of terrorism. But every single shift that Ross Johnston plays and every game he suits up in place of conceivably anybody else in our bottom six, be it a Sam Colangelo or a Nikita Nesterenko, is honestly probably the reason that there's the wildfires in LA right now. Like, it's really just such an egregious crime against God that nature is taking its revenge on Greg Cronin for just spitting in the face of nature by playing Johnston over competent bottom six prospects.
To think the situation with the blue line is even worse. Like, do you think about the tag team of Verbeek and Cronin right now? Like, obviously, there are other individuals involved in a player dev situation than besides just the GM and the head coach, but like, they are actively being detrimental to that process because, like, I understand why they traded for the veteran demon that they did from a standpoint of having mentor figures and from wanting to take the next competitive step. But making those specific acquisitions was about the worst way you can try to take this next step to being competitive as you could make. And plus, like, it's you're basically denying yourself the chance of reaping the benefits of tanking for as many years as they did by denying the young blue liners that they have in their core a chance to get more reps and develop and, adapt to making NHL level reads. Like, you put in all these efforts to get these guys to the point where you, even after having traded Jamie Drysdale over a year ago, you probably might even still have a glut, but it's like, you make some decisions about, getting these guys a proper look and just develop them by giving them NHL reps. Like,
Yeah, my biggest problem with the way we've handled this is specifically if you were going to make the Jacob Trouba trade, and we like any supposition that why did Chris Drury and Pat Verbeek clench their cheeks on that in the offseason when it would have made way more sense for both teams to get that deal done back in August? Because, like, in reality, Anaheim's biggest roster construction PV issue right now is the fact that we have Dumoulin and Trouba now. Dumoulin doesn't really Dumoulin is the piece as a left-handed D who's playing on his weak side more often than not, who's just really not filling either. Like, he himself being acquired when we already had Fowler, with both being left-hand strong D, really never made any sense. And, like, I get moving Fowler at the time we move Fowler, but, like, Dumoulin still being on the roster is just like it's the most egregious foul on this. Of he's blocking any combination of Zellweger, Mintyukov, Lacombe, and Thrun Thrun getting any, like, or Luno for that matter, getting, like, ice time at the NHL level. And yeah, sure, he's probably better than replacement, but, like, that's the reason you have Radko Gudas and Jacob Trouba, because Gudas and Trouba have no issue just fucking those are two guys who are actually, like, doing a good job mentoring. Like, Trouba has had great impacts on Lacombe's game since getting here, and Gudas has had fucking phenomenal work with Mintyukov since day one. Like, Dumoulin hasn't really helped anybody. He deserves to be playing for a Stanley Cup somewhere else as a depth piece. He's not doing us any favors. We're not doing him any favors. It never made sense for him to come here. And, like, that's like I could go on about things that Verbeek has done, but as somebody who understands, executive and mid-level management and trying to build culture, blah blah blah, like, Cronin plus Dumoulin is the only combination of things. And, like, I don't even hate Greg Cronin. I think Greg Cronin's system defensively in Anaheim is fine. I do sit here and appreciate, like, people who sit here and talk about how shitty this team is and how bad Cronin is. They have short-term memory, and I've talked about this extensively in the past, where, like, people don't really fucking remember how atrocious this hockey team was under Dallas Eakins. And with that said, like, we're running a man defense system, the same defensive system that Carolina runs. And, like, our defense isn't the problem most nights. Like, we have a competent defensive structure, and the problem is that Cronin just can't develop, lead, and build anywhere else except the defensive zone in terms of, like, playing better man defense. So, like, as an assistant coach, I think Greg Cronin could have been phenomenal here. But as a head coach, he just doesn't have the big picture hockey IQ and accountability experience to get these prospects to where they need to go.
I will say, I think that my biggest umbrage with the Trouba acquisition, aside from, like, perceived redundancy, is that they took his entire salary on, which I just, like, I understand that they have financial flexibility, but just, like, that's really the sort of deal where you want to have some leeway with, accounting for the fact that you are going to be paying guys eventually and not taking on that level of financial risk for someone who, could well be done within the next, couple of years, just from, a viability standpoint. But it's like, I do note absolutely that you know, they have seen their shots against and goals against go down significantly. Of course, but besides the fact that that's definitely come at the expense of their creativity and openness, which like there should be a lot of potential for on that roster. Not to say that some of this tightening up doesn't have its place. It's just not something you want as like the overarching system, which is why him as an assistant definitely would have made more sense. But it's like these guys have. I mean, Anaheim has earned the derisive nickname from my boy Derek as Child Endangerment Services for a reason. You look at a lot of guys who had so much promise and have come out worse already due to people who are already on staff. But for them to also not get enough games played for some of these valuable pieces, whether it be by injury or whether it be by having too much of a rotation, is just making his bad situation even worse. So like, I really legitimately like do not care for the fact that you have too many vets taking away day-to-day roster spots from these guys because they're already in a difficult situation. So like, you're just basically gonna give them like the Kirby Doc syndrome where they're not playing enough games and it's significant in these valuable years of their early development, and that's like probably uh, the biggest inhibitor from them not hitting their ceiling.
Speaking of Greg Cronin somehow getting something right, the fact that he just really won that goalie interference challenge might be the craziest thing he's pulled off all year. That's my favorite thing about being a hockey fan in 2025. Nobody will ever know what goalie interference is, so it's so much fun whenever one of those challenges comes out, because there's literally no fucking idea what's actually goalie interference anymore. I love to, I love to see it.
Truba had like a grumpy cat face when they cut to him in the penalty box.
Like, I I don't even know if, like, in theory, I guess that was goalie interference because, like, Sebastian Aho literally just moves through the goalie while he's in the blue paint when the puck is entering. So, like, I don't think Aho prevented him from making the save, but I guess I guess the argument was that Aho, that Finnish bastard, prevented him from playing it correctly. And I also really enjoy all that effort for them to still score 20 seconds later is the most Anaheim thing. But as I sulk in my own confusion, I think it's a good time to move to this week's Dev Corner.
Yeah. Uh, let's see. So I think the biggest developments that have occurred have primarily been in the dub, with the intense level of activity that occurred prior to the trade deadline, which was on Thursday in the evening. From the time that the moratorium was lifted on December 27th for trades in the WHL to when the deadline hit, there were about 30 transactions, but all focus on like the high profile ones that occurred, that were like the big talk on hockey Twitter, as well as a point of emphasis and coverage by Let's Talk WHL, a phenomenal, very dedicated page on Instagram. Of course, there was Medicine Hat acquiring Tanner Molendyk, and forward Misha Volatovsky from the Saskatoon Blades for Hayden Harsanyi, Jack Kachowski, and in typical high-profile CHL trade fashion, quite a number of draft picks. It was interesting. We saw, of course, with the a trade I wrote about in passing when covering that very, very intense, very well contested overtime settled game between Victoria and Everett. Despite being in first place just about right at that top of the race in the Eastern Conference. I believe they might have been second on in the tiebreaker at the time, or they were just barely in first. I seem to remember the GM saying something along the lines of, we are in a competitive standpoint right now, of course, and so it does seem bizarre at face value, but I recognize where we're at right now and how few draft picks we have coming up when addressing the fact, Lazowski was, before this trade to the Victoria Royals, who are seeing immediate benefit from it with his impressive and consistent productivity, as he and Kenta Isagai from the Wenatchee Wild, another acquisition that they made in that swoop, have immediately improved their winger depth to a significant degree. He continued on saying something along the lines of, we've had so few draft picks because and not much of a pipeline either, because we have always gone in on whatever big piece was available on the market. So eventually you have to start paying off the credit card. And now we see them, in the midst of this very another high performing season yet again, coming off of their conference finals appearance last year, wherein they also, I believe, had the best regular season record as well. And just, starting to look towards the future and just recognizing that the chapter is going to close pretty soon, so you got to turn to the next one and start making progress now, rather than wait until the off season. Try to force another run. But another team recognizing very much where they are right now and beginning to sell was the Kelowna Rockets, as they traded Caden Price, although of course they got a pretty good return in the immediacy with another good defenseman in the form of Will Sharp, but also the goaltender, the rights to goaltender Harrison Bodiger, and a good stash of draft picks. The Kelowna Rockets, of course, are now without Tisha Ginla for the remainder of the season due to surgery, and have generally been underperforming, which also saw head coach Chris Mallette be shown the door within the past week. I guess a very conflicting, very difficult season for him in New York overall. Mallette was, of course, the head coach for Team CHL at the CHL USA Prospects Challenge this year, but his club just has massively underperformed expectations while also encountering that setback. And so they're at the point now where they are realizing they have to turn the page, because there isn't even a guarantee that again is back next season. It's possible he is a sort of like a conditioning stint type deal after having missed so much time. But even if he is, there's no guarantee he's going to be on the sort of form that helps them. But they kind of have to strike a delicate balance because there is the indication with them hosting the Memorial Cup next season and therefore being an automatic bid within compete within the tournament. They have to at least be positioned well enough to put on a show for the considerable amount of hometown fans that there will be, and not get embarrassed. So I think they're doing pretty well with that, having an eye to the future while being good enough to get something done in the short term as well, with them being host to such an important event, the crown jewel of the CHL as a blanket organization. And then, of course, within that, you had their biggest selling deal with Washington Capitals prospect and very prolific producer, just absolute offensive powerhouse, Andrew Crystal, being traded to the Spokane Chiefs in exchange for Hayden Papanicus and another, standard massive number of picks. With him being, what he is, but also being close to aging out and, taking the next step. I definitely see him as a pretty NHL-ready player at this point. This definitely made the most sense for them to do. And, on the other end, Spokane, they have been positioned well enough with some decent offensive prolificacy by way of having both Berkeley Catton and Mathis Preston on their roster. But now having the addition of Crystal only increases that. Of course, we saw the immediate benefits in that game against Wenatchee, wherein they won 12-2, which, obviously Wenatchee has been selling the last couple of years, with them having finally gotten rid of the last piece with Issa Guy, who honestly sneakily is a WHL star and has been basically since he entered the league after having won the Clark Cup with Youngstown in the USHL before his transfer to the Dub. But within that game, you got what you wanted out of these marquee names. Both Crystal and Catton had 7-point games, with Crystal having a hat trick and 4 assists, and Catton having a goal and 6 assists. With Shea Van Olm also having a day for himself, with a hat trick and 2 assists. Therefore, with Crystal going down as the first star, Van Olm as the second, and Catton as the third. You want to make an emphatic statement, about this new look for the team and how they can assert themselves as a competitor, particularly within their conference and within the U.S. division, which obviously Everett is pretty much head and shoulders over everybody in the whole league at this point. But it's still pretty tight within that context between them, these two clubs, and the Tri-City Americans, who have been pretty solid this year. So I think this race is going to be pretty exciting to watch in this league going forward because of this very active deadline. For one last trade before I move on to some other stuff, of course, there was also the Brandon Wheat Kings moving on from Charlie Ellick as he joined the aforementioned Tri-City Americans, to serve as a nice compliment to 2025 eligible Jackson Smith on their already pretty good blue line. Alec was accompanied by a third-round pick. And the return headed back to Brandon was Jordan Gavin and Merrick Arpin. So it was interesting because that was kind of more of a standard, despite Alec's stature, which usually commands like a gigantic return in CHL trades. Like, these blue chips tend to, get a considerable amount back. Like that was more of like a, how can we competitively enhance ourselves right now for both sides? So I thought that was a nice breath of fresh air in contrast with some of these other trades, which like I don't have anything against that at all because of how transient competitive windows are due to eligibility limits in junior hockey. But I thought it was a nice, just like, that's an interesting contrast. And I thought that was like, a nice little shift there, amongst other things. But there was also some commitment action. We had Edmonton Oil Kings 2004 defenseman Josh Morey declare his intent to attend and play hockey under Norm Bazin at the University of Massachusetts Lowell beginning in 2025-26. I kind of had a hunch that Norm's first recruit from the CHL was going to be a WHL defenseman, and I was right on the money. But I also think that this specific instance of it is like, a very good, very valuable in the tangible sense, but especially in the leadership respect, which is pretty much right on brand for, the program direction there ever since he first set foot on campus. So I was pretty happy with that news. Let's see. There were some more. Let's see. Yes, so we also had Medicine Hat Tigers forward Matt Ward committing to the Northern Michigan Wildcats for next season. Leighton Feist of the Kamloops Blazers, formerly, will be attending Mount Royal University and playing for the Cougars, which evidently indicates that the U Sports pipeline hasn't completely dried up. So I thought that was a nice little bit of news in contrast with this steady, flow of CHL to NCAA declarations and commitments, which I don't have a problem with that at all. I've been clamoring for this a long time, but it was a nice change of pace nevertheless. Let's see, Tri-City Americans forward Brandon Why Not has committed to the Bowling Green State Falcons for 25-26 as well. So that was interesting. What else have we got? I also will note there was a bit of shifting in the Victoria Royals goaltending situation. So this is where it gets really, really interesting. So they recruited Jack. Hold on. Yeah, Johnny Hicks from the Brooks Bandits in the BCHL. He is interesting in an interesting situation because he is committed to play for the inaugural season of Tennessee State's D1 program. And I won't get into the specifics because I will say, and I will talk about this in private quarters, but I don't want to put anyone on blast if I don't have veracity about what occurred, but it has been alleged, I will say, that there was some drama in the situation regarding his BCHL to WHL transfer. And yeah, if it's true, it's not great, but I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus if it's not warranted. But in correspondence with that, let's see, Spencer Michnick, of course, was reassigned by Victoria to the Sherwood Park Crusaders of the BCHL, which I was a little disappointed about because I thought I was starting to really warm up to that tandem partnership of him and Jaden Krause. But I think I think this is maybe best for both sides. I could see. I think Michnick has room to grow in the junior A context, and I think Hicks will kind of help. I think he might have the slightly higher ceiling of the two, and I think will help them in their immediate competitive aspirations, which they have now, which is clearly established by them having made those moves to complement the Cole Rejny, Keaton Verhoff core, which has been the driving force of why they've been very competitive this year as opposed to their typical status quo, but was sort of inadequately complemented, particularly on the flanks. And now Krause has someone to split the starts with who, has, a little bit, just a little bit more experience as a slightly older goaltender than Michnick. And a considerable amount of poise. I also respect Hicks because he's very much an undersized goaltender. So you always love to see those guys succeed. I mean, he's 5'11", $154. So you love to see that. But the Dub has gotten some love here. So I'll also acknowledge, of course, Jack Pridham of the Kitchener Rangers over in the OHL has recently confirmed his commitment to Boston University, with him having taken an interesting path now, with him having been one of those in-season BCHL to OHL pivots, and now making it known where his NCAA landing spot will be. We also saw an NCAA to OHL pivot in the form of Flyers draft pick, specifically round 5 this past draft, from Ohio State to the Oshawa Generals by Noah Powell. He had an assist in his debut, so he's off to a good start. I think the indication that we're getting with Powell coming up on his 20th birthday, the expectation is he's just going to take advantage of the new rules and use the O as sort of like a conditioning stint environment of sorts, and then revert back to the college route because he has encountered a little bit of struggles this year, and it seems like that the junior environment will be a good place for him to sort of get some reps in, recenter himself, et cetera, et cetera. That was one instance of that that we saw recently. There was another one which I thought was pretty notable in the form of Christian Humphreys taking that same path. Let's see. Let me get some more detail on that again. Yeah, we of course Colorado Avalanche draft pick. He has, former USNTDP product that was taken in round 7 this past year. At just 1 point in 10 games to his name with the Wolverines, and is now sort of going a similar route, I suppose, to Powell with Kitchener specifically. He's played 2 games so far with 1 assist to his name. We'll see what he gets done in terms of sort of recalibrating himself. Certainly wish him good luck on that path. And I'll round this out with a bit of USHL. The Dubuque Fighting Saints, of course, hosted their Goudreau night last night. Of course, with Matthew being honored, but of course their alumnus Johnny being particularly honored with his number permanently retired. We saw that Guy Goudreau joined them for their morning skate, and also read off the starting roster for that game against the Sioux City Musketeers. And interestingly enough, the first goal of the game was John Morello setting up Matthew Desiderio, respectively. Morello is a Boston University commit who is NHL writer with the Boston Bruins, with Desiderio being a Brown University commit who was their first pairing left-handed defenseman. To kick things off, the game was pretty tense. Sioux City, I believe, tied it up late before Harvard University commit and Philadelphia Flyers draft pick Heikki Ruohonen, of course, recently acquired a silver medal with Finland at the World Juniors. Capped things off in OT with a pretty dramatic goal. So that was basically like a seemingly scripted event with a lot of sentiment that played out pretty much exactly how you would write it up if you were a screenwriter for this sort of thing. It was a very beautiful night. And, Dubuque has had quite the run. I believe that was their 6th win in a row. They've certainly been an org who's, they had good form last season, of course, with them being Clark Cup finalists, and, having generally been on mostly pretty good form in recent times. But it really seems like they've galvanized themselves and risen to the occasion, and, in paying, in playing a good game whilst, using the tragedy that, took their most famous alumnus too early, alongside his brother, who played in that same league. And just really, really like taking that motivation and turning it into results, and really just providing and engaging in providing and engaging in catharsis throughout that whole process. That means so much for so many. It's been one of my favorite narratives to witness and watch play out in junior hockey this year. And I think that's probably the best bow I can put on this block for this week.
Oh, yeah. A lot of information, a lot of good insight, a lot of good, lot of content, a lot of development going on. Always a good block of the week.
Also want to give a quick shout out to whilst in Western PA for that road game against the Penguins, to Connor McDavid for making time for his Erie Otters number retirement ceremony. It was, that was, a very ceremonious instance. Apparently, the tickets for that night sold out quite fast. when the details were released and it was made known that he was going to stop by. So, it was good to see that fan base be galvanized in that manner. Like, obviously, Erie has struggled in leadership, respect, and had difficulty in winning over the trust sometimes, honestly, and support of their community. But a night as significant as that was handled quite well, and was as big of an occasion as it should be. So just quick shout out there as well.
Which brings us to any other notable NHL topics we want to hit before the big finish? Anything we want to expand with depth upon besides the other, not aggressions, but targets of aggression that may be on our radar for our conclusion a little over 10 minutes from now?
Man, I feel like we got to make our talk with your wallets thing that we declared about the Bruins public.
Oh, yeah. Bro, fuck them Bruins. Specifically the Jacobs family. The fans deserve better. Don Sweeney. People are going to look at how yesterday's game went and think, we beat the Florida Panthers. All is good and well on Causeway Street. Except for the fact that the Bruins getting out of that with 2 points is nothing short of a PDO miracle.
Oh, yeah.
This team is bad. They're up against the cap. There's no care for the fan base. Like, this team might make the playoffs. They're fading fast in teams like Columbus, teams like, weirdly enough, Pittsburgh. Teams like Montreal are cohesive enough with enough depth scoring and youth that they're challenging this fading team who, and I was thinking about this more yesterday of the culture's cooked. The culture's gone. The Zdeno Chara, Patrice Bergeron Bruins are no more. It's clear and obvious with the recent leaks about the Pasternak Marchand discourse that's gone on in the locker room. Do I think it's as bad as the JT Miller, Elias Pettersson shit? No. The fact that nobody's ever talked about the Rick Tocchet Vancouver Canucks locker room being a fucking jovial place. No one's ever talked about the Kessel Whisperer having a great locker room in Vancouver. It's never been a selling point. Guys don't play for the Canucks for the culture. The fact that Don Shithead Sweeney sells the culture that the Bruins locker room has, and the fact that it's gone, it's cooked, it's dead. It is dead in the ground like Harry Truman. Tuukka Rask talking about the death of the rivalry with Montreal at the Centennial game the other night was just a further extension of it. The Bruins culture is shot. Their roster is old. They don't know how to develop. It's simple. And I'm guilty of it. Fans got to stop showing up. Fans got to stop watching. It's clear that this is basically the Boston Red Sox 2.0, where the quality of the product on the ice doesn't matter as long as they're making money from fucking people in the state. It's a damn shame.
Yeah. I think I don't know necessarily how much I believe on the margins and specific aspects of that report, because the particular radio personality that was responsible for circulating that is not an insider, nor do I believe he has really any connections to any insiders. And let's face it, the person associated with Boston sports radio, who's most on the pulse with these things, is Ty Anderson. And while he is holding the org's feet to the fire in many respects, it's not about a dynamic along the lines of that. But you can kind of infer from the things that he said that it is starting to erode the room. And honestly, the results kind of speak for themselves too. there is a lack of skill on the roster, but I imagine there's a lack of cohesiveness within that dressing room as well. When you consider that the head coaching bump basically didn't even really happen because it wasn't as sustained as those usually are. And then you had like a 6-game losing streak. You had, you know, a combination of, yeah, literally, like I said it as soon as the game was over. Wow, that was nutty. PDO bender much. Like just that combination of unsustainable shooting percentage combined with, Swayman putting in a legitimately good performance as, his individual form is finally on an upward trend for reasons of his own doing. It honestly, but like that's not a sustainable model of success because like those games are massive statistical outliers because of odds themselves and also the foundation of how the game is played. Hockey is rated PG, possession game. And if you're getting destroyed in that respect, you're going to lose more often than not. Like, obviously, I recognize you look at the best teams in the league when it comes to, goals above expected and having, PDO on their side, i.e. Washington, who can create their own PDO benders, and Winnipeg as well. But, like, when these occur specifically because of the fact that you're having a statistically anomalous game while also having your weaknesses as a roster exposed, then, you're absolutely just like screwed. Like that's means that wins like that are going to just be flukes. And I just don't really think it's indicative of anything positive, really. They showed their ass, if anything. And it's like, at this point, we heard the fire Sweeney chants during that 4-0 shutout loss, coming from the gallery gods in the balcony, in the Edmonton matchup. But it's like, if you really want to make action there, like you really gotta hit them where it hurts and just like have their bottom line be affected. If you are a non-season ticket holder, because in the event that you are, they kind of have your money anyway, so you're just going to have to make declarations by other means. If you are not a season ticket holder for the Boston Bruins and you support that club, you should demand better by not giving them your fucking cash. Like, we know that the Jacobs family is a bottom line first org. So you are just going to, and we know the sort of like the political element there is of how like Sweeney and Neely just could probably commit a spree of murders in the North End and probably keep their jobs. But like, so like what you're really going to have to do is just like deny them being a source of revenue for the club and just make it known that it's like, I'm not going to contribute to this issue by continuing to pay for this shit product so you can keep putting it out there. And then it's like, tear it down. Sacco can go as well. Get rid of everyone in that FO that has created this situation and let go hard with that new regime of trading pieces, even if it's going to be an unpopular move. Start banking a return on them. Start developing start putting together a new scouting and development staff, which means Ryan Nato and Adam McQuaid have to go along with everybody who works under them, and start actually building a prospect pool where you're taking best player available. Stop having this allergy to drafting from the CHL to where Matthew Patra being in the system feels like a fucking miracle. It's the biggest fucking prospect provider in the world for a reason, and just literally start looking to the future and get over this old time hockey bullshit.
Yeah, and I have tickets to another Bruins game this season, and it's not to see the Boston Bruins. It's to see, I have the luxury of being an Anaheim Ducks fan sometimes. Of if the Ducks are winning that game in the third period and the Fire Sweeney chants aren't started, boy oh boy am I going to be working on those, because there's no reason that the Boston Bruins should be losing to Anaheim at any point in time.
Yeah, like I mean, I will say, hold on, I'm gonna check something. Uh, I do feel like my gut suggests that. Oh yeah, I was there was another point that I thought of along the lines there, like their positioning in the postseason, in like the postseason race right now is honestly kind of glossed to begin with when you consider the number of games in hand. A lot of teams around them have, so you to the point where you can't even take it at face value anyway. But there's another point here. Let me see something. I have a hunch, but I want to make sure that it's right. This will also be slightly out of date, but uh, let's see. Best record versus best teams. They are, as of the last update I can find on that from Data Driven Hockey, they sit at 19th with a 44.1% points percentage. So not great. Definitely not getting it done against the teams that are vying for those spots. Let me see the other end of that though. Let's see. Let's see. That's a little. Of course, that's 10 days old, so it's declined a little bit since then. Their playoff chances sitting at 60.9 also seems a little bit generous. Let's see. 12 biggest loser point merchants in the league as well, at 6.0%. That's another fun one. Let's see. I'll take a look at their strength of schedule, just for the hell of it as well. Let's see. Pretty low. So I mean, they do hypothetically have a path. It's not as easy as the bloomers of Bruins fandom. What few there are left would probably think, but it's there, I suppose. Let's see. Where the fuck is best record versus worst teams? When was the last time this guy provided a public update on it? Third most disappointing team in terms of comparison to their record last year at this time. Let's see. Yeah, it's been a while since he updated it. 13th most dominant team in terms of 5v5 expected goals for percentage. Like, of course, on the flip side, they're 24th in PDO luck as of that update. Man, I cannot find it. Man, what is he usually provides them at the same time? Yeah, I'm getting the indication that their record against the worst teams is probably a bit better than their record against the best. So like they do have some degree of optimism, but like with how things have been declining and with how much they've underperformed, them getting embarrassed by bottom feeders is and bottom dwellers is just not off the table for them. So it's like at that point you're really, really going to have to take action. And it's like you really, really had to get it started on the populist level because I mean they're gonna keep feeding you shit if you keep eating it. So
And on that note, I think it's a good point to rally into our big finish this evening.
speaking of discontent with leadership, uh, we know where we know exactly where John Tortorella stood with the energy in the building due to Cutter Gauthier night at the Wells Fargo Center last night. He was not content with it due to the fact that he would rather the energy be there um, because of their compete level, and for them being a force to be reckoned with in the postseason. It's like he sounded very discontent with it, and um, it's like aside from the fact that he attributed this as a media thing that the fans have eaten up, it's like his own bosses propagated this. He himself propagated it with the post-game presser that he provided after that Penguins game during which that trade took place with some of his own remarks. But beyond that, it's like I mean, here's the thing. I don't disagree with that, but I think that it's kind of akin to SpongeBob looking for the maniac. It's like, sir, you for the organization has been in this position due to its own incompetency for the last decade, and you have been a part of the problem for the past 3 years, arguably the biggest. I think that I am of the mind that John Tortorella is a bigger hindrance to this organization taking steps forward than the underperforming front offices because his approach is specifically is antithetical to player development. So it's like I can't even really I can't even justify his position given that he fed into the hysteria and we ate it up just as was asked for. And for another thing, he's literally part of why the team, a big one at that, is not in that position. So it's like they're gonna get active and get rowdy for whatever they possibly can because there hasn't been another reason for the Wells Fargo Center to be that engaged really since you know at least when Claude Giroux's best seasons, if not you know a full-on decade plus ago when they were consistently a fixture on the Versus slash national NBC Sports nationally televised games in the prime uh, Emmerich and Old Chuck years. So that's like, you know, you kind of have to take what you can get. And and it's just like, if you want this to look up, if you want the fan base to be in engaged to that level for the reasons of a competitive team, then you have to be the part of the reason why that's even happening to begin with. So it's like the way I see it is John Tortorella can either get with it and become part of the reason why that happens, or more likely get the fuck out of the way and just get out of here. Because I don't think it's coincidental that you look at a lot of the organizations basically since I think pretty much every org he's been in, save for Vancouver because it took them maybe a little bit longer, was within a few years, ever since his Tampa Bay days, they had those clubs had all improved their fortunes after they had within a couple of years of them having moved on from Torts or from them trying to replicate it. Hell, with the upward trajectory that Columbus is currently on. I would even add them to that canon at this point. And that's even bearing in mind, like, sure, he can get guys to rosters to overachieve, but it's always going to be for a short period of time, and he is not conducive towards players reaching or exceeding their ceilings. So it's like, I just think that, and with him calling the fans, basically out for his what he perceived to be a lack of intelligence, more or less. I think he's really, really also putting himself in a compromising position with the fan base, which are going to turn on him and then talk with their wallets. So, hey, I mean, I think the Fire Torts movement has a lot of fuel right now.
On a more positive note, the women's U18 has concluded. Just really enjoyed getting to watch Natalia Lupasanova win her second MVP at the U18, and it's insane that she has a chance to do it next year because she's still only 16. Cannot wait to see what she's going to be able to do for the women's game, either in the NCAA or in the PWHL in the next, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. Very much has Caitlin Clark potential for women's hockey. Not to be outdone or completely forgotten, however, Chloe Primerano, also for Canada, winning Best Defender once again. Very much looking forward to what she's going to do at the collegiate level in the next couple of years. One of the best international rivalries we've seen in women's hockey to not involve a Canadian than American. Primerano is off to a good start for the U of Minnesota, and really looking forward to see, as she gains more NCAA experience, what she's going to continue doing there. And really just hoping that Lupasanova, if she goes NCAA in a couple of years, decides to go to a Duluth or an Ohio State or pretty much any school that Primerano isn't at, so we can see them play against each other with on equal footing with teammates that aren't as heavily lopsided as the Canadian junior versus Czechia junior teams, or Slovakia, pardon me.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, of course, it was kind of laughable talking about that slightly hyperbolic dialogue that sprung out of that. But it was a nice reminder of Nila's very blatantly generational status. It's always fun just seeing her, work as a driver on Bishop Kearney, but for her to stand out in an environment like that with the chips stacked against her in that manner is, when you really, really feel it, and that was pretty cool. I also want to give a quick shout out to Greg Cronin on the flip side of how we talked about him for most of the night for being more receptive to what occurred and what the lead up was to that than Tortorella himself. Cronin was like, the drama leading up to it created some great energy in that building, and I gotta applaud the irony of that, kind of. So that's really kind of how I had to supplement my closing remarks, is that, Torts really has to do better or get the fuck out, as I've said more or less at this point. The bullshit just has gotten out of hand. But yeah, as Minnesota versus VGK starts up, which will probably be the game of the night tonight, we will sign this off. Some really not so great things going on, but a lot of good dialogue that sprung out of it. I'm glad to see at least the dev environments, both for boys / men and women / girls, has been plentiful in providing some nice contrast to that. But it, all of it is always worth discussing. You know, because we create dialogue. We don't just like fling shit or whatever. There's always something to analyze and discuss about this, and we enjoy doing it in front of an audience, and especially one as great as the one that we have, small though it may be at this stage. But you know, always credit to the communities we've engaged with and become a part of. You know, be it on the Meta platforms or on Twitter/X. But you know, thank you everybody who tuned in. Thank you to everyone who's checking us out on Spotify and YouTube. You know, um, we appreciate you know, being on this ride with you. So this is another great episode. We look forward to the next one. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.